Some politicians in Maryland think that the state government and not the owner of the property should decide who is and is not evicted. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting topic for you today, and it's a topic I have covered in other places before, but this time it's in the state of Maryland. And right now, Maryland is considering the good cause eviction protections. Basically, the government, not the property owner, decides whether or not a tenant's lease is renewed, okay? So let's say that you're a landlord, you have a 12-month lease with your tenant, right? At the end of that 12-month term, you can choose whether you're going to renew that lease for another year or whether you're going to allow the tenant to move on to somewhere else. I mean, it's up to you at that point, right? And the thing is, they say it's not fair. It's not fair that you can just end your tenancy. You can end a tenant's tenancy at any point, even if they did nothing wrong, right? Well, it is fair, and in a lot of cases, it is easier for a landlord to remove a tenant by allowing their tenancy to end than taking them to eviction court and removing them. Because when you take somebody to eviction court, you know, the process does not always include a lot of the exceptions. You know, and one of the exceptions I always talk about is, hey, let's just say that you and your tenant, for whatever reason, just don't get along, okay? So you and your tenant don't get along, you know, you don't like your tenant doesn't like you, and there's a bunch of negative energy between you. Why should you be forced to house that tenant for the rest of their life or until they decide to leave? You should be able to say, hey, I'm just gonna end it after the 12 months and that's it. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. So do you believe that the government should be the one who makes the overall decision whether a tenant, you know, their tenancy ends or not? That's a good question, in my opinion. In my opinion, the landlord, the property owner, should be making business decisions when it comes to their business. If they don't want you as a customer, they don't have to take you as a customer. You know, just like how if you go into McDonald's and you disrespect the staff, well, they can ban you from McDonald's. They don't have to you shouldn't force them to serve you, you know? Like, why should I as a landlord be forced to serve somebody who I don't like? Okay? That's just an example, but you know, you get the gist of what I'm trying to say, I hope. So anyway, let me get into this article, tell you about what they're doing up in Maryland. This article is coming from wypr.org, and it says, Maryland lawmakers will consider good cause eviction protections. Let's get into it. When a landlord in Maryland decides not to renew someone's lease, they don't have to give a reason. Tenant advocates refer to these as no-cause evictions and are pushing state lawmakers to restrict their use during the current legislative session. There are stark racial disparities in who is affected by the evictions, according to data from the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, presented to the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee Tuesday. The data show that zip codes with a higher proportion of black renters have a higher rate of no-cause evictions, which are also referred to as tenant holdover evictions. A 10-point increase in the percentage of black renters in the zip code is associated with a 29% increase in the rate of no-cause eviction warrants and a 22% increase in the rate of holdover eviction, David Wheaton, an attorney with the NAACP LDF, told the committee. So this means that landlords are bringing more black people to court on these no-cause eviction warrants, and they're being evicted at a higher rate. So the implication by this moron, and I'm going to call him a moron because that's exactly what he is that these people are getting evicted just because they're black, or they're not renewing their lease just because they're black. Well, the question would be, why would the landlord rent to this person in the first place? Okay? If they're so racist, if they don't like black people so much, why in the world would they have rented to them in the first place? Okay? That's the first question. Second question would be, why did you buy a property, you know, in this area? Because a lot of the black people getting evicted, they're in predominantly black areas. Why did you buy a property in this area knowing that there's so many black tenants there? Simply put, the argument doesn't make any sense. And that's why it's an idiotic argument. So you're saying that, oh, black people are being disproportionately affected by this? Well, that might be because black people have more financial issues, a disproportionately greater number of financial issues than other races, okay? But rather than looking at it like that, right, you instead want to play the racism game, and I get sick of this garbage, okay? Jose Coronado Flores, policy analyst with the immigrant rights group CASA, said landlords use no-cause eviction to punish tenants who advocate for better living conditions. For example, CASA Legal represented residents of an apartment complex in Rockville as they took their landlord to court over bad living conditions, including mold in the HVAC system. CASA Legal represented 29 tenants in rent escrow court. Coronado Flores said every single suing tenant received either a lease non-renewal or an eviction from the property. And though Casa Legal is, of course, fighting the ones that we can, there's likely that tenants will be displaced just because of their advocacy. And that's a hard one for me, okay? Imagine here you are a business and you're getting sued by your customers, okay? Like, for example, McDonald's is getting sued by somebody who ate a Big Mac and didn't like the Big Mac. Does McDonald's ever have to serve that person again? No, they could just be like, you know what? You're banned from all McDonald's. You're suing us? Screw you. Okay? Go away. You cannot come to McDonald's anymore. You're trying to take millions of dollars from us? I don't want to serve you anymore. But when a landlord does the exact same thing, all of a sudden it's wrong. Oh, you know what? I don't want you as a customer after you decided to sue me. After you decided to take my money and hurt my business, all of a sudden I don't want you as a customer, and you think, oh, well, that's not fair. Well, yeah. So, you know what? I think a landlord should have the right to non-renew your lease if you get sued by a tenant. Delegate Janelle Wilkins and Senator Anthony Muse say they are sponsoring legislation requiring good cause or just cause evictions. The legislation is expected to be formally introduced later this week. The bill will exempt landlords with 5 or fewer rental units, according to information provided by Renters United Maryland, a coalition of advocacy groups. It allows larger landlords to remove tenants for several reasons, including if the tenant violates the lease, fails to pay rent, or damages the property, as well as if the landlord wants to use the property for a personal or familial use, or wants to remove the property from the rental market for at least a year. So here's the big problem, right? They put those exceptions in there, but in order to prove the exceptions, you still have to take the people to court. So that means that the landlord has to go through additional steps and processes in order to remove a tenant. It could take longer. It could cost money if you have to hire lawyers, and overall it's a bad thing. And they say, oh, it's only going to be for the properties over 5 units, right? Or the landlords who own more than 5 units, right? So they're trying to appeal to the smaller landlords because they make up a lot of people, right? But how long do you think the law is going to change? They're going to have a lot of small landlords, and they're going to be like, you know what? There's too many people out there who are still getting evicted because they're not protected by this just cause or good cause eviction law. So we're going to have to make the law blanket and cover everyone, even the people who are just renting out a spare bedroom in their house. That's what they did in all those other states, okay? They did the exact same thing in all those other places, and now just cause eviction is the law of the land no matter how small your property is. So don't think for 1 second the state of Maryland isn't going to do the exact same thing. However, representatives of the multifamily housing industry say good cause eviction legislation will harm lawmakers' goals of building more affordable housing. It will prevent developers from getting investors for their property, said Chris Bruce, president and CEO of the Donahoe Companies, a real estate firm based in Bethesda. The ability not to renew a lease is necessary to protect residents, staff, and property and neighboring properties, said Ariana Royster, senior advisor of Borger Residential, a subsidiary of Donahoe Properties. Royster told lawmakers to imagine a new resident excited about their apartment. Then their upstairs neighbor overflows the bathtub 3 times in as many months. Well, management enforcement of the lease is to go to the legal route, which can take more than a year, Royster said. In the meantime, you're being subjected to a neighbor who cannot be controlled by management. And that's a great point right there, okay? So you're talking about a multifamily property. You might have 2 tenants who, although they are all paying the rent at the same time, they can be doing stuff that is, detrimental to your other tenants, okay? They could be doing stuff that is annoyance, something that's not quite to the level of being illegal, but something where you want to get them up out of the property. So One example would be somebody who, like they said in the article, overflows their bathtub all the time. It might be loud music. It might just be rude behavior to everyone else around. It might be leaving trash out. But whatever the reason is, the landlord should have the right and the ability to decide whether they're going to renew the lease of this person or not. And that's what these laws take away. So what do you think? Do you agree with me, or do you agree with these stupid politicians who think that the government should be the one who decides whether a lease is renewed?